This is a little unexpected, but we're going to wing this morning, and we hope you guys will sing real loud.
Real loud.
Anyway, it's a beautiful morning, even though we've had a lot of rain, and it might be a nice time for everybody to turn around and say hi to their neighbor and just get to know each other. Yeah, all three. Oh, I can see it. Can you see it? It's going to be up on. Oh, I said this. That I am with Janice.
mean, we just kind of pushed it together this morning. But the first three people that came, I asked them, what's your favorite hymn? And that's what we're singing now. So if you want to be one of those people who chooses a hymn, you better come early.
Thank you, worship team, for filling in literally at the last hour. So thank you all so much for filling in. As I said, I did it where I volunteered to Pastor Rob with everything going through the preach. I felt God laid something on my heart to share with y'all today. And it's something that is not fun. I guarantee the question I'm about to ask, a lot of you, if you like this, then you might want to talk to Pastor Rob when he comes back. How many of us like to have tests? That's what I thought. Just finishing up seminary a couple years ago, the terrors I had when the professor went, "Oh, we have a test this week." And then they would give me the study guide. I'm like, "Oh, there's 40 questions and they're all essay." He's like, "Oh, 10 are going to be on there." Oh. But in our lives, we are tested many, many times, whether we really want to or not. And as you guys, as I'll tell with your reaction, we don't really like it. I don't like it. You guys don't like it. We don't like being tested because we go through stressful times. We go through hard times. It's interesting that the Oxford Dictionary defines a test like this: a procedure intended to establish the quality, performance, or reliability of something, especially before it's taken into widespread use. Yeah, I know that's for like testing out different devices, testing out different things before it goes out, but I sat there thinking, that kind of fits us getting tested too. Now, no, we're not some sort of tool that God's just going to go, okay, I'm going to pick up John today, then we're going to pick up this one, we're going to pick up that one. No, like, we are the hands and feet of God, and he wants to use us. But it's interesting when I thought about that definition, I was like, what's interesting is this, is that we do get tested for many different reasons. And I started thinking about different times in the Bible where tests have been happening. But there are different ways that we're going to get tested. The first one, if you Well, right, as you fill in the blank, as I learned from Pastor Rob, filling in the blank really works. I remember better when I do that. For the first blank, God will put us to the test. I know somebody thinking, whoa. God's going to put us to the test. Oh, yes. God does love us and he cares about us, but as I was a teacher and I had students many times look at me, they said, well, why do I need a test? I'm like, I want to make sure you're catching what I'm teaching you. Because if you don't know what 2 plus 2 is, you're not going to know how to do 2 times 2 or keep on going further. We've got to be tested to make sure that we're actually following God or we have enough faith to follow him. So the example that I felt God laid on my heart was Abraham and Isaac. In Genesis chapter 22, God literally lays it out in the very beginning in the first 2 verses. If you want to turn there for Genesis 22, is where we're going to start off. We're actually going to go through a couple passages of 2 different men who were tested, but by different people, by different things. But Abraham, we're going to go with him first. In Genesis 22, verses 1 and 2, it says this. After these things, God tested Abraham. So the Bible literally just clearly points out God's testing Abraham flat out. Right here, he's getting tested. Now, does Abraham know it at the time? Probably not. And he said to him, Abraham, and he said, here am I. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Wow. What a test. Like, a lot of times we're given little tests like, hey, I want you to go move over here. I want you to go take a new job. I want you to take a leap of faith with me on this. Yeah, he says, Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your son. Your one and only son that you've been waiting for over 100 years for. I want you to sacrifice him. Wow. Now, being a father myself, I would pose myself that question saying, if God told me to sacrifice one of my kids, would I do it? And I went, my first thought was, take me instead. Take me first instead of them. And maybe that's what happened with Abraham. I don't know. We don't know fully what was going through his head at the time. I would say, take me instead. A lot of other parents, maybe you'd be the same thing. Take me instead. But if God went, no, it has to be your kid, your one and only child, one of your children. Pick one of your children. That'd be terrible. I don't know if I could honestly do it. That'd be so difficult. But Abraham goes. He does it. He doesn't wait around. He's like, all right, let's go do it. So going later on, just imagine Isaac in this moment too. They're going like, oh, we're making a sacrifice. Hey, Dad, where's the lamb? I love how Abraham puts it. He said, God will provide. And I'm like, well, that's an easy way of saying, well, son, you're the sacrifice today. If I were the son, I would probably run away if I heard that. But it's interesting that verse 9, it says this. When they came to the place which God had told him, Abraham built the altar, he laid the wood, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Here's the amazing thing about this too. Isaac was obeying him. That's what's amazing to me. If it were me, I'd be panicking. I'd be like, why are you tying me up? Why am I going on the altar? I'd be freaking out. Isaac has so much trust in his father. He just lets him do it. Then Abraham reached out his hand and he took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here am I. He said, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. God was testing Abraham to see, how faithful are you to me? Would you give up the most precious thing in this world for me? That's the same question posed to us. Are we willing to do that? Are we willing to step forward and have that much faith to be able to follow God? What's amazing is going way later on in the book of Hebrews, which somebody had just taught about this last week and helped me for my sermon. Thanks, John. Hebrews 11, verses 17 through 19 shows what was in Abraham's mind at this time whenever God was testing him. He said, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his son, of whom it was said. So, like I said, Abraham was ready to sacrifice his son. Full-blown ready. It wasn't that he was going to be like, stop and like, okay, God, you going to step in? No, he was ready. Through Isaac shall your offering be named. He considered that God was able to even raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. That's how much faith he had in God, saying, you know what? If I even sacrifice my son, I know God can bring him back. That's how much faith he had in God that he could do the impossible. How often do we struggle with that? That God puts a test for us and we go, God, I don't think that's very possible. I don't think that's going to happen. Are you really sure that's going to happen? God, I don't know about this. God will test us. It's going to happen. But there is 2 verses that always puts me at ease whenever I feel God throws a test at me. That's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Now, is that easy? Oh, heck no. If it were easy being a Christian, everybody would be one. It's not easy to step forward in that faith to follow God. We've all been tested. For some people, including myself, we moved to Hawaii. That's not an easy move. Friends and family all back in the mainland. Pastor Rob and Sarah, when they did it, they followed God's calling to move out here. It's not easy to give up everything to follow God. I had questioned God a lot about it. I said, you're literally moving me to an island, and I hate the beach. Oh, and I still am not very fond of it either. Actually, I love the Hilo beaches. I'm not very fond of Kona. Sorry. I hate the feeling of sand in my toes, but that's another story. It was not easy. When I told Sarah, she went, yes, the beach. She was excited. I went, I don't know if I want to move. So I had kind of done with God. Said, okay, God, here's my negotiation. If you do this, this, and this, I'm going to go. Yeah, then of course God went, okay, by the way, here's a job for you. Here's a place to live. And then here's this thing too. Next. I went, oh, thanks, God. Thanks for answering my prayer. But does God always do that when he's testing us? No. Would it be easier that way? Kind of. When God puts us to the test, we don't know what's going to happen. But what we have to be is like Abraham. Abraham had so much faith in God that he said, even if I do have to sacrifice my son, God can bring him back. God can do the impossible. So that's the first thing I wanted to bring up with y'all. Is that yes, God's going to put us to the test, but he's testing us to see how faithful we are. And I want you to think about that. How faithful are we? Now, are we perfect? No. Do I get mad at my children? Yes. Do I get mad at traffic when somebody cuts me off when it's pouring down rain outside and I'm trying to get to work on time? Yes. We're not perfect. But you know what? We're going to make mistakes. That's why God did to where he sent his son to sacrifice himself for us. And that's why we need to rely on God with how imperfect we are and the mistakes we make to lead us down that right path. So I want to encourage y'all that when God puts you to the test, which we don't always know when that's happening, stay strong and follow him. But you know how God puts us to the test. There's something else that likes to put us to the test, which is your second fill in the blank. Sin will put us to the test. Oh, yeah. So in Genesis 39, when I was starting to think about, okay, I could do so many examples about sin putting us to the test. We can give examples in our own life when we were tempted to go do this instead, or we're tempted to go do this over here. There was one guy in particular. I went, I've got to share about him. That's Joseph. Now, for Joseph, as some of you might not know, he's had a little bit of a rough time lately. You know, he did to where he was the special born son of his father, that of his favorite wife. It was the firstborn of that one. He kind of bragged about it. And so his brothers went, fine, we're going to sell you off as a slave. That made me grateful for my siblings. I never got sold off as a slave. That they loved me at least a little bit till I stuck around. But he got sold off. He's now a slave in Potiphar's house. That's not very fun. I don't care what it is. Being a slave is not going to be fun. I don't know what that's like. I've read about it. I don't want any part of it. But Joseph does this instead. He's like, I am going to be the best that I can for God. So he gets put not only from just like a bottom slave, he's now in charge of the slaves. It's described that but literally only Potiphar and his wife are above Joseph in the household. But there was a problem. Joseph apparently was good looking, as literally they put it in the Bible. As I put it, if it's put in the Bible, they're probably good looking. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, right at the very end of verse 6 says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. We're in Genesis 39 right now. Well, there you go. So Joseph's good looking apparently. Now I'm kind of curious when I get to heaven what he looks like. I'm not going to lie. Some people, it's like they say they're handsome. I'm like, well, I want to see what they look like. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. Oh boy. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. Now, think how tempting this would be for Joseph. His master's wife is throwing herself to him. He literally could have her, and she's probably a beautiful woman, we don't know. But literally, the person that is right above him is attracted to him. That'd be very tempting to be able to fall into that temptation. But what does Joseph say? No. My master has trusted me with this house to where he has no concern about it. That's how good of a job Joseph's doing. That literally Potiphar didn't have to think about his household, and that all it is like, you are off limits. And notice how it says there, day after day. Now, theologians debate back and forth about like how long this actually is. I think it could be that this was maybe months, weeks, months, that she is day after day after day after day trying to tempt him to be able to come to her and make him sin. Sin is testing him, saying, Joseph, how strong are you going to stay to God? How strong are you going to follow God when this opportunity is given to you? Now, looking at later on in the story, he does get caught up in a situation to where she tries again. He says no. When he's trying to run away, she rips his shirt and then goes, oh, look, he did this to me. He did this, and Joseph got thrown in jail. Now, you would think, wait, but Joseph was following God. Why did he get thrown in jail? That doesn't make any sense. He got punished for that? That makes no sense. How often does it feel like that when we're following God, when sin is tempting us, that it actually feels like it gets worse? I've had that happen. I'm like, this makes no sense. God, I'm following you, but it just got worse. I just lost this friend. I just lost this family member. They don't want to be with me anymore. I just lost my job. God, this makes no sense to me. Why? But if you follow the story of Joseph, instead of moaning and groaning about it, he's like, you know what? Fine, I'm just going to keep being the best I can. He's put in charge of the prisoners. The jail people are like, hey, Joseph, want to help us out? You're so great. Help us out. Eventually, God gives him the gift of being able to interpret the dreams that are happening. And eventually, after he interprets Pharaoh's dream, he becomes the second in command of all the kingdom of Egypt and is able to later on save his family from famine. Wow. Sin is going to test us. It will. And if you haven't experienced it yet, power to you, but it's coming. We probably have all been tested by sin. We've been tempted to want to do something we shouldn't do. Our faith is put to the test. Joseph didn't falter. Joseph kept staying strong to want to follow God. He wanted to make sure. He said, I will not do this great wickedness. Now, for a lot of us, including myself, if I keep following God when sin's tempting me and I feel like I get punished, that'd be hard. It'd be hard to want to keep going. It'd be hard to be able to go like, yeah, this is great. I just got thrown in jail for following God. This is great. It'd be hard. Yeah, if any of y'all want to go to jail, Okay, power to you. I don't, especially back in Bible time prisons. They got the sweet life compared to back then, today. Whew. Having to research about prisons back in Bible times, I am very grateful that hopefully will never go to prison. But I probably would have faltered. I'd be like, God, why did you let this happen? But Joseph kept staying strong when sin wanted him to falter. And God blessed him for that. But there will be times we will falter. There will be times we're going to fall short. We're not perfect. But that's what will happen. The final point is this. God has tested us, sin's tested us. We will respond to these tests. We're going to. We have to. There's no, hey, how about I put no answer? Doesn't work like that. I was hoping that was going to happen when many times God has tested me or when even sin has tempted me. No. It's either going to be you follow one way or you follow the other. That's what's going to happen. When you have a test, it's either you pass or you fail. It's not like numbers. I love numbers because numbers, there's always a way to get those numbers. 2 + 2 = 4. You can't deny that. If you do, you're probably a theoretical person, so have fun with that. Numbers have a certain system. There's a certain way to get the answer. The problem is, with God's test, there's not always an easy way to get the answer. With sin's test, there is an answer, but how often do we want to do that answer? How often do we want to do what makes us feel better? We're going to respond. And God has a certain verse about that. In Romans chapter 12, in verse 2, this is one that every once in a while, I love how my Bible app will pop up. It's about maybe once a month it'll pop up. And I'm like, oh, there we go. That's a great reminder. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Yeah, so God laid out again right there, you're going to get tested. Not only by me, but by this world. So don't conform to this world. Don't fall into that trap of when the world is going to throw this test at you that tempts you to fall away from me. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Follow me. Trust in me. And when God throws a test at us, we need to trust God that He's going to take care of us, even when it seems like, okay, God, you want me to quit my job and go take this other job that takes less pay, that does this, that does this. We need to trust God. There's a reason why that God will take care of us. God will help us. He'll be there for us. But we will have to respond. Because you know what? If we don't respond, like if you took a math test and you did not fill out a single answer saying, I'm not going to take this test, you're going to get a 0. You're going to fail. That's what's going to happen in life. If we don't respond to God, we're failing Him. If God calls us to do something, we go, you know what? I'm good. I'm good. We're failing Him. If sin is tempting us to go away from God, and we go, you know, I'm going to take the easier path. I'm just going to go lie about this. It's fine. We're failing God. We will be tested in this world. The question is going to be, how will you respond? Are you going to follow God and stay true to Him? Whether He's testing us, whether sin is trying to lead us away from Him, or are we going to take the easy way out? We follow what our desires want. We follow what's easier. What are we going to do? A verse last week that we went over in Sunday school really stuck with me this week. Hebrews 11:6. So thank you, John, for having Hebrews Sunday school class. It really helps out a lot, whether you know it or not. Hebrews 11:6 says, and without faith, it is impossible to please Him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him. We've got to have faith. That is what this is all about. Our faith is tested. How strong is our faith? Is it strong enough to withstand these tests? Is it strong enough to withstand what the world is going to throw at us? Are we going to stay faithful and true to Him? or are we going to fall away? Because as it says here, without faith, it is impossible. And in the Greek, it's translated impossible to please God. I know. I love it when the Greek does that. It's impossible. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. We need to have faith to follow God. So I want you to think about this and encourage you this week. When life is throwing a test at you, I want you to stop and think, what am I supposed to do? Am I going to take the easy way out and follow that sin is testing me to follow them? Or is it God testing me and I don't really want to do it? Or am I going to follow God to show how faithful I am? Or am I going to show this world, you can't break me? You cannot break my God. So let's pray. God, thank you today. God, even though the weather outside might be gloomy and wet, God, thank you for being so faithful to take care of us. That God, when we prayed for the rain, you were faithful and you gave it to us. That God, our catchments are overflowing with water. Thank you so much. But God, I ask you to help us this week that God, there will be many tests thrown our way. Whether it's from you, whether it's from this world, God, we will be tested. I ask you, God, to help us, to remind us to be faithful. To be faithful to you. That God, when you're testing us, we stay strong to follow you, that we trust in your way and follow the path you have before us. And that God, when the world is trying to tempt us away from you, that God, we don't fall away. We stay strong and we keep following you. Help us, God, to be faithful to you. And I pray this all in your name. Amen. I'll turn it back over to the worship team as you're ready to close. Thank you. Before y'all sit, before we close, I do have a verse for y'all. It's 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brothers, rejoice, aim for restoration, comfort one another, agree with one another, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. You may be seated. Online people, thank you for coming. I was not even sure you were going to be here, so I am very grateful for Eddie for getting it all working again, and you guys have a great rest of your day.